Hey everyone, it's Maddie and B, and today we're going to be talking about our writing goals for 2019. This year we're trying to balance two projects, one contemporary and one fantasy. Our contemporary we're nicknaming Project Imposters, and that is our main focus for the year, but then we also have TFM, which is our fantasy project, and that is probably something we're going to pick up maybe in the summer, but definitely towards the later half of the year. Project Imposters is something that we've had in the works on and off since February of 2016. We came up with the idea during our second year at university, wrote the first draft during our third year, and now we're 6 months since our graduation and I've really started to think about how we could change the story from the first draft based on an edit letter we got from a publisher. We chronicled our writing process in update videos on our Bookish channel, so if you want to watch any of those to catch up on the full story, then a link to the playlist will be in the description. Basically, we entered a contest that pushed us to write quicker and meet deadlines, which was very, very good for our first novel because it meant we actually finished it. With 6 months of distance from that edit letter, we are finally ready to start tackling it again, and we have already for the last month been in conversation about ways to improve, and that has definitely rejuvenated us for this project because we weren't sure whether we were going to abandon it completely. So we are resurrecting it in 2019 and we will finish a revised draft. Our first task was to create in-depth character profiles, getting to know our 6 mains and any secondary characters. This was something that we decided to do for our fantasy project pre-NaNoWriMo, and just thinking about the characters that way wasn't something we'd done for our contemporary project, but we realised it was necessary. We got the basic information down, like what they look like and what their relationships are with each other, but the most important thing we learnt about them through this process was their motivations. So essentially our first goal for the year is already completed because, as you can tell, we've already ticked this off, and thank goodness because we're already 3 weeks into January. Next step after character profiles is to outline Act 1, and obviously to follow on from that, Act 2 and Act 3. The process that we had when we first came up with this story was very organic in the way that we'd think about it, and then we'd write that section, and then we'd think about what would happen in the future. With our fantasy project, we tried to think about everything in like a linear timeline so that we knew from the very beginning what would happen at the end. I think that helped really change our outlining method going back to this contemporary. We have our tentpole moments in a bullet point list on Scrivener, and then we've left gaps in between them to add in the scenes as we think of them, so we can jump around because I think working chronologically is too restricting for us. So whilst we say outline Act 1, 1, 2 and 3 are kind of all going to be done together in bits. Next goal is to write a draft of this project from start to finish. We don't know when in the year we'll actually be starting this, hopefully around April time, and we want to get it finished by June. We're basically doing the opposite of what we did last time by putting more effort into the planning stages so there aren't any questions left in our mind, which is super important because we are each in charge of a different perspective, so we need to know what is happening in the others at all times to make sure that we're moving to the same point in the future. So then we're going to leave a little bit of waiting time after we finish the draft, so maybe we'll take July off to focus on our fantasy project, and then in August we want to read through the entire draft. And after that, we're going to write ourselves an edit letter, which is the final task for this project in the year. Because we've received a professional edit letter, we know the tone and we know the different areas to pick up on, so hopefully it means we're going to be more thorough when it comes to thinking about our project throughout the whole thing, that we won't have as much to comment on in our edit letter, but we still want to take that as critics rather than as readers and creators of the work. We want to distance ourselves, and that's what the time off is for, so hopefully we can look at it with new eyes. We're not sure how much we're actually going to act on the edit letter. It depends how much of the year we have left and whether we do want to shift focus into our second project, TFM. Our goals for that story is to read through all of the stuff that we wrote for NaNoWriMo of 2018, which was roughly 40,000 words. In that, I think we barely finished the first act of the story, so our other 2 goals are to re-outline and potentially rewrite that section. I think the reason why we didn't get to 50k of NaNoWriMo is that all of our mistakes seemed so glaringly obvious in terms of pacing, I think, as we were writing it, that we just couldn't push forward just for the sake of it. We knew we needed to stop and go back because things were just dragging a lot. We did spend a little bit of October doing this outlining and thinking about our characters, but certainly not in the depth that we need for a fantasy story that's juggling 4 perspectives. So our focus needs to go back to world building, go back to our story binder, and properly fill that out so that we're a little bit more prepared. Essentially, our fantasy project has always been on the back burner for us. It's been a dream to write, and we came up with the initial idea like 5 years ago, so I know that there's absolutely no time pressure to get it finished. If it's weighted waited that long, it can wait even longer. This year is like our final chance to give this contemporary a go so that we can try to be traditionally published. We may be able to exceed our goals, but the point of this year was to be very realistic about our time and how much we can dedicate to writing. Obviously, it would be great if we could finish an edit by the end of the year, but I am perfectly happy to think of that as a 2020 goal. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Let us know in the comments what are your goals for 2019 and what project you're going to be focusing on. We'll see you next week.